friends. Today we're going to be talking about the fundamentals of CSS. So come on and let's jump into it so we can learn together. So here it says, in this unit, you will be introduced to the fundamentals of CSS. The goal of this unit is to introduce you to CSS, one of the languages essential to developing websites. You will learn how to apply styles to HTML documents using CSS. After this unit, you will be able to understand how CSS is used for web development, use CSS to add initial styling to your website, understand the box model in CSS, add positioning using CSS, and read CSS documentation. Learning is social. All of Code Academy spill here. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Hey there. Okay, so this is our 5th day on our streak. Yes. My feet are on. It's getting hot. Alrighty, so here's our intro. While HTML is the fundamental structure of every web page, it can be visually unappealing on its own. Cascading Style Sheets, or CSS, is a language web developers use to style HTML content on a web page. If you're interested in modifying colors, font types, font sizes, images, element positioning, and more, CSS is the tool for the job. Okay, so in this lesson, we will be learning how to set up our CSS file structure and select which HTML elements we wish to style. Step 1, we're going to take a look at the code in our index.html file and observe how it displays in the browser to the right. This is plain HTML without any styling. Let's take a quick look at the power of CSS. Copy and paste the following line of code into line 5. So let's go ahead and copy that. Find our line 5, paste it. Then what happens when you press the run button? So here we can see the right side. You can see our browser now. We're going to press run. Ooh, that changed just from this line here. So we referenced a file here, and this is all of the CSS that created what's on the right here. Nice. What's that? 152 lines worth of CSS to create this. This is nice. All right, next. All right, so CSS anatomy. The diagram on the right shows 2 different methods or syntaxes for writing CSS code. The first syntax shows CSS applied as a rule set, while the second shows it written as an inline style. 2 different methods of writing CSS may seem a bit intimidating at first, but it's not as bad as it looks. Well, that's good to know. Here, let me just adjust my window so y'all can get a better look. We're really missing anything much. There we go. Alrighty, so both methods contain common features in their anatomy. Notice how both syntaxes contain a declaration. Declarations are the core of CSS. They apply a style to the selected element. Here, the paragraph element has been selected in both syntaxes and will be styled to display the text in blue. Okay. Understanding that a declaration is used to style a selected element is key to learning how to style HTML documents with CSS. The terms below explain each of the labels in the diagram on the right. So here are the rule set terms. Selector, which is here on the top left, selector, the beginning of the rule set used to target the element that will be styled. Declaration block, that's the code in between and including the curly braces that contain the CSS declarations. Declaration, the group name for a property or value pair that applies a style to the selected element. Then our property here, which is the first part of the declaration that signifies what visual characteristic of the element is to be modified. And then lastly, our value here in the blue is the second part of the declaration that signifies the value of the property. Okay. So the declaration block, the code in between and including the curly braces that contain the CSS declaration. Okay, all of this is a declaration block. The declaration is what's encapsulated in the curly braces, the property, the color, then the value is describing the property. Okay, okay. I think visually, I like the way the CSS rule set looks. Looks a little bit easier to read. Okay. So the inline style terms, opening tag. So up here, the opening tag is the start of an HTML element. This is the element that will be styled. Attribute, the style, the style attribute is used to add CSS inline styles to an HTML element. The declaration is the group name for a property and value pair that applies a style to the selected element. So let's take a look at declaration here. The group name for a property and value pair. So this is our property here, and this is our value. This is the pair that applies a style to the selected element. Okay, okay, we got that. So the property is the first part of the declaration that signifies what visual characteristic of the element is to be modified. So the color here would be our property. We're down here. And then lastly, the value, which is the second part of the declaration that signifies the value of the property. So that would be blue down here. All right, so don't worry about memorizing all of these. You will get acquainted with them more and more as the course progresses. Feel free to come back and use this exercise as a reference later on. Because we're just gonna remember this is page 2. Study the diagrams to become familiar with the CSS syntax and the new terms that will be used throughout the course. Next. All right, so inline styles. Although CSS is a different language than HTML, it's possible to write CSS code directly within HTML code using inline styles. It did look pretty similar to HTML. So to style an HTML element, you can add the style attribute directly to the opening tag. After you add the attribute, you can set it equal to the CSS styles you like to apply to that element. Okay. The code in the example above demonstrates how to use inline styling. The paragraph element has a style attribute within its opening tag. Next, the style attribute is set equal to color equals red, which will set the color of the paragraph text to red within the browser. Okay, so here's our style attribute. And then we set that equal to, and this is the property and value, property and value pair. Okay, so it's our attribute style and it's set equal to the property, which is color. That is what we'll be modifying, and the value is red. And this is the property value pair. Got it. If you like to add more than one style with inline styles, simply keep adding to the style attribute. Make sure to end the styles with a semicolon. So here the style attribute is set equal to, here's one property value pair. So the color is set to red, the color is equal to red, and then another property value pair That's modifying the font size to 20 pixels, and that's it. Okay, so it's important to know that inline styles are a quick way of directly styling an HTML element, but are rarely used when creating websites. You may encounter circumstances where inline styling is necessary, so understanding how it works and recognizing it in HTML code is good knowledge to have. So you'll learn the proper way to add CSS to code. Oh, soon you'll learn. Okay, so here's our instructions in the index.html file. Use inline styling to set the color of the first paragraph to green. All right, so we're going to go ahead and find our paragraph element here, and then we're going to use our style attribute, set that equal to, we're going to set that color, colon, green. Okay, that looks right. We're going to run that. And there we have it. We have this paragraph here in the browser. It's green. Okay, we're going to go ahead. Next. Okay, so internal style sheet. As previously stated, inline styles are not the best way to style HTML elements. If you want to style, for example, multiple header 1 elements, you would have to add inline styling to each element manually. In addition, you will also have to maintain the HTML code when additional H1 elements are added. Okay. Fortunately, HTML allows you to write CSS code in its own dedicated section with a style element nested inside of the head element. The CSS code inside of the style element is often referred to as an internal style sheet. Okay. So style can have its own element now. We're being introduced to that. All right. An internal style sheet has certain benefits and use cases over inline styles, but once again, it's not best practice. We'll get there, we promise. Okay, good, because I want to know where we're going to. Understanding how to use internal style sheets is nonetheless helpful knowledge to have. To create an internal style sheet, a style element must be placed inside of the head element. Here's an example of what that looks like. After adding opening and closing style tags in the head section, you can begin writing CSS code. Okay, so it looks like we're going to have to open up the style element before adding CSS directly to our HTML. Okay, so that's good to know. The CSS code in the example above changes the color of all paragraph text to red and also changes the size of the text to 20 pixels. Note how the syntax of the CSS code matches, for the most part, the syntax you use for inline styling. The main difference is that you can specify which elements to apply the styling. Alrighty, so let's move the inline style that was added to the paragraph into an internal style sheet. Start by adding an empty style element in the head of our index.html file. All right, so here, I wonder if it would go before. Okay, we're just gonna go ahead and add it in. We'll see what it looks like as we go. So we're gonna open that element up, and then go ahead and close it immediately. And then, okay, we did that. Run. Perfect. Inside of the style element, add a CSS rule set targeting the paragraph, the P element. Okay. You can leave the declaration block empty for now. Okay, so we're just gonna add open that element. That doesn't look right. Okay, let's try this. Still doesn't look right. Oh, okay. This is what it's supposed to look like. So P, then we're going to open a curly brace. And that's it. We're just gonna put this back where we got it from originally. There we go. There we go. Okay, next, place the declaration from the inline style into the empty declaration block in the inline style sheet. Okay, place just the declaration from the inline style. Only one I see here is this one. Yeah, that's the only one I see. All right, so maybe we'll try that one then. And we'll do color, select, it's red, or in this case, it's going to be green. And I guess that's it. Okay, we're going to put this semicolon. There we go. Beautiful. Okay, finally, delete the inline style from the paragraph element. Put this one here. There we go. And then notice how the styling works the same in the style sheet as it did in the inline style. Okay, you notice that. Alrighty, we're gonna move on. Okay, developers. So this is external style sheets now. We just did internal. Now we're on external. So developers avoid mixing code by storing HTML and CSS code in separate files. HTML files contain only HTML code and CSS files contain only CSS code. You can create an external style sheet by using the .css file name extension like so, style.css. With an external style sheet, you can write all the CSS code needed to style a page without sacrificing the readability and maintainability of your HTML file. So our instructions, we're going to take a look at our index.html file, cut the CSS code rule set in between the opening and closing style tags, and paste it directly into the file called style.css. So we're going to take this CSS code here, copy that, and put it directly into the style.css. Paste. Then delete the remaining style element from the index.html file and press the run button. So we're just going to take all of this out here. We're going to run that. Nice. You see our font over here went back to black. All right, we're going to move on. And now we're going to link this CSS file, the style.css file. So we successfully separated structure from styling, but the web page still looks bland. Why is that? So when HTML and CSS codes are in separate files, the files must be linked together. Otherwise, the HTML file won't be able to locate the CSS code and the styling will not be applied. You can use the link element to link HTML and CSS files together. The link element must be placed within the head of the HTML file. It is a self-closing tag. That's good to know. Self-closing tag and requires the following attributes. So our link element requires our href, so our reference, like the anchor element. So the value of this attribute must be the address or path to the CSS file, and then a rel, or would that be relative? Oh, relationship. Okay. This attribute describes the relationship between the HTML file and the CSS file. Because you are linking a style sheet, the value should be set to style sheet. So when linking an HTML file and a CSS file together, the link element will look like the following. So it's going to look like link, and then we're going to set that H reference to our external URL. And then the relationship is set to style sheet. Note that in the example above, the path to the style sheet is a URL. Yep, we noted. Specifying the path to the style sheet using a URL is one way of linking a style sheet. If the CSS file is stored in the same directory as your HTML file, then you can specify a relative path instead of a URL, like so. Here, let's just get some more information on the directory. Okay, it's a file system. You can go back. Okay, so anytime it's that relative path, and it looks like this, so it's two files in a directory, we're going to use that // Okay. Using a relative path is a very common way of linking a style sheet. So let's link the style sheet style.css to the HTML file index.html. Okay, first add a link element within the head section. We're going to go over here to head and open up our link element. We're going to immediately close it because that's just good practice. Link. Oh, this one's a self-closing tag. So we're good. Okay. Next, we're going to add the href attribute to the link element and set it equal to style.css. So here, I'm going to href, set that equal to link, href, set that equal to dot / style.css. Take a look at the web page in the browser to the right. Do you notice any changes yet? Okay, let's run it. Did we notice a change? Just copy that. See if we notice a change. I didn't notice a change. Let's see again. Okay, yeah, no. All right, finally add the relationship attribute and set it to the correct value. Keep an eye on the first paragraph's font. It should appear different from the destination's description when your style sheet is linked correctly. So we're going to keep an eye on the first paragraph here. It should look different. We're going to set our relation equal to style sheet, then run that. Okay, it's back to green. Okay. So what we did here is we set our reference to this file here, and this is the code that we created in step 5, I think, or the last step, maybe the step 4. So now our paragraph, our first paragraph is back green. Right, let's move on. All right, great work so far. By understanding how to incorporate CSS code into your HTML file, as well as learning some of the key terms, you're on your way to creating spectacular websites with HTML and CSS. Let's review what we've learned so far. That's a lie. So we learned the basic anatomy of CSS syntax written for both inline styles and style sheets. We've learned some commonly used CSS terms such as rule set, selector, and declaration. We learned CSS inline styles can be written inside the opening HTML tag using the style attribute. Also, inline styles can be used to style HTML, but it's not best practice. An internal style sheet is written using the style element inside the head element of an HTML file. Okay, I didn't understand that one. Okay, so we learned an internal style sheet is written using the style element inside the head element of an HTML file. Okay, got it now. And then we also learned internal style sheets can be used to style HTML, but are also not best practice. An internal style sheet separates CSS code from HTML by using the .css file extension. We also learned external style sheets are the best approach when it comes to using HTML and CSS. And lastly, we learned that external style sheets are linked to HTML using the link element. So we're going to take this knowledge to the next lesson where we'll start learning how to select HTML elements to style. And then here are some more resources. I will link these down in the description so we all have access to those. Then I think that's all. Let's see what's up next. All right, we're moving on up. See if we have a quiz or anything. Don't have a quiz. This is just the continuation of our CSS. I guess we'll keep going. So here we're learning about selectors for type. So remember that declarations are a fundamental part of CSS because they apply a style to a selected element. But how do you decide which elements will get the style? With a selector. A selector is used to target the specific HTML elements to be styled by the declaration. One selector you may already be familiar with is the type selector. Just like its name suggests, the type selector matches the type of the element in the HTML document. In the previous lesson, you changed the color of a paragraph element. So this is exactly what it looked like in our CSS file. This is an instance of using the type selector. The element type is P or paragraph, which comes from the HTML paragraph element. Some important notes on the type selector. The type selector does not include the angle brackets, and since element types are often referred to by their opening tag name, the type selector is sometimes referred to as the tag name or the element selector. Let's see. Okay, I think we're actually going to pick back up on this in our next session. We're going to end it here because we've been on for 30 minutes and I want to make sure that this information is digestible. So we're going to stop here and then pick back up in our next session. So thank you all for tuning in, and until next time, sunshines.